Cutback for Vasilev, and Lukic! A banger of a strike for Jovan Lukic's first MLS goal!
It's fallen out to Westfield! Oh, wow! He's nearly taken the roof of the net off! Philadelphia pounce again!
Who gets his goal on his Union debut? The record signing, off and running in his first appearance for the club.
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and we told you guys that we may or may not have a midweek show for you. Surprise, midweek show for you. We try to provide for you guys, and when we're able to coordinate things, we'll try to get you guys midweek show. So super happy to have a guest on tonight to preview Inter Miami versus Philadelphia Union. Kickoff Sunday at 7 p.m. I know the last episode I kept saying Saturday. And you guys corrected me in the comments late in the show and said, no, it's on Sunday. So yes, the game is definitely on Sunday. And you guys also asked us a couple weeks ago, how many points does Jose and I think the Union will get? I said 4 points. So that means the Union have to get a win on Sunday against Inter Miami to finish the last 4 games with 4 points. Will it happen? It's a pretty tough task, but if you look at the history under Bradley Carnell and Philadelphia Union, the last 2 games that these two sides have met, they've looked better than they did under former head coach Jim Curtin. But enough of that. Tonight, I am joined by Jake Zivin. He is the lead voice of MLS Apple TV. More importantly, and I'll go ahead and share why it's more important to me. And some of you guys listening to the show, if you guys have been listening the last couple of years, you guys know exactly why. He is the former voice of the Portland Timbers. But first and foremost, Jake, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. Great to join you. I loved hearing my guys, Whitty and Callum, in the intro to your show. Maybe we can add one of my calls to this weekend. We'll see. It's tough. It's going to be a tough task for Philadelphia on the road in their final game before the World Cup break.
So that's exactly what I wanted to bring up, because people that have been listening to the show for the last couple of years, I just changed the intro last year. In the last, I would say, 3.5 years, you had 2 calls on the intro.
It
was
nice.
Philadelphia Union versus DC United. You and Danny Higginbottom were on the call in
That's
2022.
Right. Yes,
on
seven goals.
Yeah, 7 goals. Yeah. The Julian Carranza bicycle kick. I mean, phenomenal call by you. And then Mikel Uhr, I think, had 2 goals in that game. I was like, yeah, these calls are too good to pass up. So I was like, they got to go into the intro. So for 3.5 years, Jake, that's all the listeners heard was your voice.
I love that. I appreciate that. Unfortunately, I'm sure everybody who I have called scoring a goal for the Union is probably no longer on the team. So unfortunately, that is the case, as the team has moved on from some really good players, which we're going to talk about, obviously, the past couple of years. And you got to get the Kevin Sullivan first goal in there, though. I mean, this is MLS history that just happened within the past week.
Yeah, it's massive seeing Kevin score last week against Orlando City, and a game that I was fortunate to be at covering it. And so it was pretty cool to say, yeah, I was at the match against Orlando City when Kevin Sullivan scored his first Philadelphia Union goal in MLS. Pretty cool feat. And talking to Kevin, even though the Union lost that game, I mean, you're 16 years old, you score your first goal, you've been waiting years for that. Of course you're going to be buzzing, and Kevin absolutely was. And I know Apple talked to him after the game. The Union talked to him. And yeah, I think if there was probably more media down there, yeah, Kevin probably would have given a couple more interviews, and it's a big deal for him. But super excited, like I said, Jake, to have you on. And I talked about it a little bit. You're the former play-by-play for Portland Timbers with Ross Smith. And so listeners of the show know that I'm based in Maryland, and so I can never get PHL 17 with Danny Higginbottom, Tommy Smith, and JP Della Camera. And so, yeah, I would watch the games on ESPN. So I can remember just turning on ESPN Plus and watching a ton of Portland Timber games with you and Ross. And yeah, I love the duo between you guys. If I'm not mistaken, you guys recently called a game together within the last year, right? Reunited.
We did. We've called a few together in Apple, actually, which is one in the Apple era, which is wonderful. We did 2 last year. We did a game in Vancouver, which was always our favorite road trip. Like, Vancouver's a great city. It is my favorite road trip in Major League Soccer. We'd have a lot of fun there when we went with the Timbers. And so it was fun to reunite in Vancouver. And then the Timbers had like a 50th anniversary celebration game last July. And it was pretty cool that Ross and I were able to call that game. There were a ton of Timbers alums that came back. Diego Valeri called the game in Spanish. Diego's the lead Spanish analyst. So Diego and I are doing most of the same games now. And so, it was nice of the schedulers, of our bosses in Apple to let me, Ross, and Diego all stay or I'll be in Portland for that game. Ross doesn't live in Portland anymore. Which was fun. I mean, there were so many former players that came back of the 50 years of the club, and that was a special night for the Timbers to have everybody together. Ross included a former Timbers player, so he went down at halftime. Diego went down at halftime, and that was really fun. But Ross is one of my best friends in the entire world. I love listening to him and Tony call games now, as they've been paired together for now 4th year on Apple TV. And we had a wonderful time together calling Timbers games. He is the best person that I know in the world. Ross Smith is an incredible human being. And we had a lot of fun together.
And it showed, honestly, listening to your broadcast together and everything. And yeah, this past weekend, I've been waiting for this moment, getting somebody on that's calling a upcoming opponent for the Union. And so you had called Inter Miami and Portland Timbers on Sunday. Now the Philadelphia Union see Inter Miami. So I feel like your knowledge is pretty good on Inter Miami. I know you've called a ton of Miami games the last couple of years with Apple. So you would probably say they're the team you know best in MLS, which I know for this day and age in commentary for the Apple deal, it can be kind of tough for you guys when you guys could go week to week, different teams and everything. But Miami, you and Taylor Twellman definitely know them well.
We do. We were talking about it after the game last night. I think we've done 60 games of theirs in the Lionel Messi era, the Leo Messi era, as he has told us now that he likes to be referred to as Leo, not Lionel. So the Leo Messi era. We've done a lot of them. Yeah. So last night, as we're talking on Monday, full disclosure, last night, Sunday, Portland versus Miami, like those are the two teams that I know better than any, and it was very comfortable, I would say, broadcast. Just and we work very hard to make sure that we are very knowledgeable about every team that we call, and I'm an MLS nerd for my whole life. I mean, I grew up in Chicago, a diehard Chicago Fire fan as a kid. I remember where I was when Eric Winalda scored the first ever goal in league history. I was 10 years old, I think, 10 or 11. And so for me, it's always been a focus on the whole league and not just the Timbers, when I was calling Timbers games. So I feel comfortable, calling any MLS game that there is. But look, certainly when you have over a decade of experience with a specific team like the Timbers, like I do, and then so much, intimate knowledge of calling so many Inter Miami games. Yeah, it does make it a little bit more comfortable. It was fun. It was a fun game to call, and it was a good win for Miami. They're rolling. It's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard for Philadelphia next week. Yeah,
I agree with you, Jake. The Union are definitely not in the greatest of form. No, like it's so obvious for people. But yeah, speaking of the Inter Miami versus Portland Timbers game, I do want to talk about that before we get into Philadelphia. Yep. And again, we've talked about it. You're the lead commentator, play-by-play for Apple TV. And of course, you're going to be neutral. But whenever you get put on these Portland Timber games, they've got to feel pretty special for you, right?
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Look, I'd like to think when Ross and I were calling Timbers games locally for it was Root Sports and then Fox 12 Plus. So it was only airing in, obviously, if you're on ESPN Plus or MLS Live, you could watch wherever you are. But our audience were Timbers fans. It was airing in Oregon. It was airing regionally in the Pacific Northwest. You could watch in Washington and in Idaho as well. So we would call the games from a Portland Timbers perspective, just like JP and Danny would for Philadelphia. And those guys are total pros, obviously. I mean, Philly fans were so lucky to have JP and Danny and Tommy Smith before that calling Philadelphia games. But so we would call Timbers games from an objective, neutral perspective. We tried, we're not homers, we're not going in on referees, but we're still focusing on the Timbers. If the Timbers are trailing in a game, we're going to talk about what they need to do to get back into the game. If you're calling it neutrally, for Apple, you're going to maybe focus on what the other team's doing well. So anyway, what I was saying that is I'm pretty comfortable in a role of trying to of being a neutral, objective commentator. But it is always fun. I mean, like I have a lot of friends that work in the organization still, right? Sam Uni, their legendary kit man. I mean, we'd spend, hours on the side of training, just chopping it up, for years. So it's always fun to see those guys and to see everybody around the organization. I called games with Liam Ridgewell. He was my broadcast partner the past couple of years. We did a 3-man booth, and Rawson moved away from Portland after the pandemic. He would come back. He would do about half the games with me and Liam, but it was Ridgie and I on every game. And Liam's now on the coaching staff for Phil Neville for Portland. So he's a good friend of mine. So yeah, being able to, to see them it's fun. It's special. I enjoy it. And yeah, but it wasn't a good night for them last night. It hasn't been a good season for Portland. We don't need to talk about Portland. We're talking about Philadelphia, Miami, but Portland they've got some questions, big questions to answer right now.
Yeah, they absolutely do, with Inter Miami defeating them on Sunday night 2-0. And yeah, this is an emotional game. I know Phil Neville making his return back to Miami since being let go in 2023. This win, also historic for Inter Miami, the first win in their brand new stadium, And when I went back and watched this game, a ton of shots, Jake, in this game between both teams. Both teams had opportunities. And, if you're a soccer fan, you want attacking soccer. Yeah, this is the game to watch. Just chance after chance after chance. Miami, they registered 22 shots with 9 of those on target. James Pantemis, he had himself a big game, making 7 saves, including that fantastic save off of Leo Messi's free kick. I thought that was in for sure, but James was able to get up there in the top corner and make a fantastic save, which I'll say it now, 14 games into the season, I don't need to see any more saves.
Save of the year. Yep, 100%. Save of the year. James Pantemis. What a save. What a moment for him. That's like gone viral. There's such a social media economy around Leo Messi and around Inter Miami. And I mean, just the comments on every video that Miami, it's 100-fold anything else, right? Because of Messi. And what's interesting is a lot of the comments, like you go to YouTube and you look at the 10-minute highlight package of that game, and the top comments, right, as YouTube's algorithm puts it, are not about Messi's assist, which was a remarkable moment. It's about James's save on Messi. And so that save has kind of gone around the world, and it was a wonderful, incredible save. From our angle, it's hard to tell really how good it is in a moment like that in a free kick, because you see the keeper get over and you see him make the save, and it's on a level of good. But until you really get the look on replay from behind the goal, we call it the high end zone, that's when you can really see like, oh man, that was a perfect free kick for Messi. That is in the upper 90, and James is full stretch picking that out. Not a lot of keepers in the world can make that save, legitimately. Right. I'm not saying James is one of the best goalkeepers in the world, but in that moment, that save is one that, like, the way Messi hits that goes in against most goalkeepers in the world, anywhere. Right. If he does that in the World Cup in a few weeks, it's going to likely be a goal. So, mad respect for James, who's a great guy, who I know a little bit about up here in Portland. And he's been really good this year for the Timbers. And yeah, if it wasn't for him, it could have been more for Miami for sure. Not just that save, but he had a couple in the first half. You mentioned it being an entertaining game. The first half certainly was. I think the Timbers and both teams to an extent ran out of gas towards the end of the game. And so the Timbers didn't really have that point. It was hot. It was muggy. It was, of course, the third game in 9 days for both teams. So they couldn't really push towards the end. They had some good moments, kind of like from the back line to 20 yards from goal, but just no quality in that final moment to really threaten Dane St. Clair. And Miami, they have the most quality in the final moment of any team in the league. And that's the difference.
It is. And when we look at the chances for Inter Miami in their build-up and just all the chances that they created, what stands out to you with this Inter Miami team where, again, we talked about it, 4 games in, they hadn't won a game in new stadium, and then they come out here, finally win. I know they've been scoring, but yeah, it looked like Inter Miami had finally found their form in the new stadium last night.
Yeah, I think for them, the 0 is more important than the 2, right? The clean sheet, which is only their second one in MLS play this year, only their third all competitions. I mean, they battered Orlando for 35 minutes a couple weeks ago, and they were up 3-0, and it could have been 6-0 if not for another Canadian goalkeeper who was on the Timbers the past couple of years, Maxime Crepeau, who was phenomenal in the first half of that game. It's 3-0, 35 minutes in. Martino Hayda gets a goal. It's 3-1 at halftime. And then Miami is just brutal defensively in the second half. I mean, they let the game get so stretched. They let Orlando kind of bait them into coming forward and looking for a fourth goal. And then there was just so much room in transition for Orlando to get out and run into. And Orlando comes all the way back and wins 4-3. Just the third time in league history, from 3-0 down to winning 4-3 in 31 years that's happened. And so because of that, and because of kind of the demons of that and the, hey, we haven't won yet at New Stadium, that hanging over everybody's head, supporters weren't happy that they hadn't been acknowledged by the team. And I mean, if you're following that on social media, it is every which way and every angle, and everybody's saying this meant this and that meant that. But it was clearly something that played into the game on Sunday, and the supporters did not sing and play their drums for 85 minutes. And then they started to, and then Messi is having some sort of communication with them. And so is Rodrigo DePaul. You can interpret the interpretation how you want, but so with all that hanging over everything, keeping that clean sheet, I think was the most important for Inter Miami, because they will get their goals. They will create their chances. They do it because they have the best player in the world in Leo Messi. And they have a couple guys who are just, specifically Suarez, I should say, that just feels telepathically connected to Messi. And the past couple of years, they had four that were all telepathically connected in Busquets and Jordi Alba and Suarez and Messi. And at times it felt like you could put those four out there with 7 of me, right? Just to fill space. And I wouldn't even have to touch the ball. I'm just a body to fill space. 7 clones of me who got cut in high school, and they would score. We might not win the game because we might allow 5 goals, but they would score goals. Just those 4 guys, just knowing that it's only going to go between them, they could score. They're just so good in tight spaces and combining with each other and knowing what each other are going to do. They don't have Busquets and Jordi anymore, obviously, and that was missing the beginning of the year for Miami. It didn't look in sync. And inserting Suarez into the 11, ironically, the move that won them MLS Cup was keeping him on the bench. But I think the move that has opened up Miami this year is putting him back in the 11, because now there's somebody to play off Messi, somebody that just gets him. And Suarez is still elite technically and elite in his mind, and he can play in tight spaces and he can pull stuff off, and he knows what to do and where Messi's going to go. And you throw DePaul in there. Segovia's been playing really well. It's really hard to stop them from creating chances. Phil Neville told us before the game, they will score goals. They will get chances. Now they also concede goals, and we need to score 3 to win the game, is what he said. We'll need to score 3 to win the game. He was right. They lost 2-0. They needed to score 3 to win the game. They couldn't do that, but he was right. And so, I think if you go into a game thinking the plan is we're going to shut out Miami, and maybe this is naive of me, but it's hard to do. It's really hard to do. And so I think it's about limiting them, and then having a plan to go, and whether it's in transition, whether it's in your possession, to go attack a team that is vulnerable, still quite vulnerable defensively, despite obviously the clean sheet on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. And just looking at it, both Philadelphia and Inter Miami have both conceded 24 goals this season, which is a little bit of a surprise that the Union have conceded 24 goals in 14 matches, when last year they conceded a league low 35. And we're only at 14 goals and they've conceded that many.
The 2 best 11 level defenders are no longer in Philadelphia. Your former defender of the year is in Los Angeles, and your potentially best left back in the league for the past half decade is in England. So that doesn't make it easy, right?
Yeah, it definitely doesn't. And you also look at away through Macania, who finally gets a chance last year with the Union under head coach Bradley Carnell. And when you play, to your point, next to 2 best 11 defenders, of course, it's going to make you look better. And Macania, he's had his moments this year where he's looked good, but I don't think he's reached the levels where he was at last year. And a big part of that is because he's playing next to 2 of the league's best defenders. And now, like you said, Jake, they're no longer there. But yeah, Philadelphia definitely have to take advantage of their chances against Inter Miami. And you had touched on it a little bit with Jordi Alba and Sergio Busquets no longer being at the club, but Javier Mascherano, the coach, no longer in Miami. Guillermo Hoyos is now the interim coach. I don't think he has the official title yet for Inter Miami.
No, I don't know though. They don't call him the interim coach either. So it is kind of this gray area of, is he the permanent coach? Is he not? It does not seem like they're out there looking for a manager, I would say. But, the World Cup break, we'll find out a lot. Whoever's coaching their team on July 22nd will tell you a lot. If it's Hoyos, it's his job, at least in the short term. If they hire somebody, then right, it was interim the whole time.
Pep Guardiola reports out that he's out of Man City afterwards.
Pep, I mean, that would be incredible for the league. I'll say that, right? Intrigue to the extreme. I think it's more likely Pep is opening Etihad Park for New York City, maybe. I mean, he loves New York. He is publicly loves the city of New York. It's within the City Football Group. That would be awesome for Major League Soccer and for New York City. Now, Pascal Janssen they've struggled of the past couple of months, but he's done a very good job over the past year and a half. So I don't want to move on from Pascal Janssen. Yeah, maybe he moves up right as well and something. Yeah. But Pep in New York City would be pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, seeing Pep in MLS would do wonders for this league. And, MLS gets a bad rap with watching Wilfred leave Columbus and go to Celtic. It doesn't work out. Ramsey with Minnesota going to England and not working out with West Brom, I believe it was. And look, we know there's quality coaches in MLS, but I feel like if you get a world-class manager, one of the best of all time, and Pep joining the league, I think that takes your league to another level.
Yeah, of course. And just like with players, right? And there'd be less of a stigma because coaches, you can't call it a retirement league for a coach. That doesn't work. You're like, sorry, you can't say that. And I think what it's going to also help MLS is I think what Messi does in the next couple of weeks at the World Cup, I think that's going to really help the perception of MLS because everybody can say they can comment on everything he does now. And I'm saying, oh, it's only MLS, yada, yada. I'm sorry. You watch this guy play. Now, look, he's not defending, right? Which is fine. Whatever. He doesn't have to. But you watch him play, and he could do this stuff anywhere in the world still. The second goal they scored, he takes 5 touches in 6 yards. The ball is no more than an inch off his foot the whole time, 2 or 3 inches. I mean, who's going to stop that? You foul him, and it's a penalty. It's remarkable. He is still playing at such a top level. And I think it's going to help the perception of MLS, what he does at the World Cup when everybody sees, oh yeah, he's still Leo Messi.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's been a lot of changes for Inter Miami. We talked about that. And I guess maybe the biggest one is bringing in Bertarama, $15 million from Monterrey. How would you assess this season overall so far, Jake?
Yeah, it's been a disappointment. There's no doubt. I mean, he was a very big signing. He was a very coveted player for multiple Major League Soccer teams. So he had the reports were he had a $15 million out clause in his contract. 2-ish years ago, the Portland Timbers agreed to pay that. They wanted him.
They got Rodriguez instead, right?
They got Rodriguez instead, exactly. So it wasn't even 2 years ago. Was he? Yeah, it was 2.5 years ago, right? So before the 24 season, they agreed, and he didn't want to come to Portland. He was still waiting to get his Mexican citizenship because he wanted to become eligible for the Mexican national team with an eye on this World Cup. That we don't know if he's going to be on their roster now. And so he passed. Then I think that summer, Cincinnati agreed to pay it, and they thought he was coming. And for whatever reason, he decided not to at the last minute. And he stayed in Monterrey. And then, now Miami, the chance to play with Messi, and he's a little more ingrained in the Mexican national team now over the past year and a half. That'll entice you. But because of that, I mean, it was only a few months ago, everybody was saying this is an unfair. I mean, right? The kind of the out there, the thought was this is unfair. How is Miami doing this? This is not fair. Their offseason they've had. And the fact is, it was a good offseason. But it was not an unfair offseason, and it took quite a bit of time for the new pieces to gel. Sergio Reguilón has been injured. He is now back, but he has not played much, and he's looking better now that he's played a couple games. He's a very high-quality player. Bertarama has scored, I think it was his 5th goal last night. Taylor and I keep mentioning it. He has missed 5 to 6 sitters this year, like legitimately kind of swing and a miss. In a very odd fashion. It's bizarre for a player of his quality because he is a quality player. he'll get goals because he'll get chances in that attack. But it hasn't looked particularly smooth, I would say, the transition. David Ashala, who they paid $2 million to the Timbers, he's been injured. He hasn't played much. When he has played, it's only looked okay. Yannick Bright has kept that spot ahead of him. Mikael, I think, finally now is settling in. The pairing with Lujan seems to be better than it was with Maxi Falcone. They've gone to Lujan the past 3 games. They've won those games. Falcone was benched essentially after the Orlando loss. And it's been better. So maybe that just is a better fit with Mikael Lujan. And Dane St. Clair has not been the goalkeeper of the year. He has not been at that form that he was last year. So all of these big signings in the offseason at kind of every level of their team that everybody assumed were going to go straight into the starting 11 and they were going to be even better than they were last year as the MLS Cup champions. It hasn't panned out that way. They missed Jordi Alba badly. I mean, Jordi Alba and Kai Wagner were similar in that they were left backs, but so much of what the team did in the attack went through them. And they're irreplaceable in what they can do. They're similar players, actually, but a little different. Wagner was more service-oriented. Jordi was a little more combining with Messi, and he would cut inside sometimes, but there was that cut back, and it was ridiculous. It was like Messi could be surrounded by 5 guys and Jordi would somehow put it right on his chest where people are a foot away from him and it somehow makes it to Messi. It was remarkable. And they really missed that this year. They have been figuring it out the past month, but there's no doubt the first 2 months of the year that was glaringly missing in their attack, in their buildup, in everything that they do. And Busquets is Busquets. Now, Busquets defensively didn't have the legs. That was a little bit of a liability, but then you put Bright next to him and Bright can deal with that. It wasn't Bright at the end of the playoffs. It was DePaul and Baltasar Rodriguez. There were enough legs around him that it worked. And his vision and his ability to get the ball from the back to the front is perhaps the best in the history of the game. Yes, those guys were old and they were tired, but they signed all these guys that have great resumes, but everybody really underestimated what losing Busquets and Jordi Alba would do to this team. And they're still trying to figure it out because they still don't look quite on the level that they did at the end of last year. But the past 3 games, and even the Orlando game for the first half, they have really looked like it. Yeah,
they have. So there you have it. You're into Miami side of things, Philadelphia fans. So let's go ahead and switch to this upcoming Sunday's game between Inter Miami and Philadelphia Union. And I mentioned it a little bit in the intro, Jake. The Union have looked much better the last 2 games against Inter Miami under head coach Bradley Carnell. They lost 2-1 down in Miami, but they had big chances in that game. Ty Barribo had a header saved. Chris Donovan had a shot blocked in the second half inside the 18-yard box, if I'm remembering correctly. Bruno Damiani had a late chance saved in stoppage time. The Union could have came away with a point down in Miami. And then when you look a couple months later in Subaru Park in Chester, the Union were up 2-1. Quinn Sullivan gets an early goal in the 7th minute. Miami scores in the second half to make it 2-1. Then the Union get another goal with Todd Barribo to go 3-1. And then Leo Messi does what Leo Messi does, and it's always going to make a difference. All he needs is one chance, and makes it 3-2. And then Segovia ties it up late in stoppage time in the second half, and game ends 3-3. And you talked about it, right? Losing Kai Wagner, losing Jacob Glesnes. Big pieces gone for the Union now. Ty Barribo continues to score with DC United. Mikel Uwe no longer at the club. Union off to a terrible start. Worst start to the season for a defending Supporters Shield champion winner, losing the first 6 games of the season. And the Union only 1 win in MLS this season, 1-9-4 record. And when you look at how the Union had started the year, Jake, is it really that big of a surprise to you? Again, I know losing the 4 players that they lost, that's big players to lose, and they went out and spent a little bit over $10 million to replace these guys. But again, these guys are joining MLS, a new team, a new country, new coach, new playing style. So it's going to take time, like Miami, to adapt to how you want to play, still try to figure things out. But I don't think anybody saw the Union 14 games into the season, only 1 win.
No, of course not. I mean, it's the big disappointment, right? League wide. I don't think that is, I don't think it's really much of a contest, to be honest. It's hard. it's never a guarantee to replace good players in this league, right? It never is. And perhaps Philadelphia, from the outside, it looks like Philadelphia tried to do too much at once, right? And they have been phenomenal at turning over the roster, at replacing guys, and it just finding kind of value players, right? They spent money, like you said, this offseason, and making signings that work, right? I mean, all these guys we're talking about, they signed from abroad, and it's not like anybody had heard of Kai Wagner. He came from the 3rd division in Germany, didn't he? Right? I mean, it's ridiculous. Nobody had heard of Glesnes before he came. So these signings all worked really well. But it does seem that they turned over too much of the core at once. And you pair that with Quinn Sullivan's ACL injury. But look, that happened early enough before the end of last year that there was plenty of time to adjust your transfer strategy, so to speak, your offseason strategy, so to speak, to say, okay, maybe, we can't sell too many of these guys. We need to keep more of the core together because Quinn's out as well. And now it's really 5 starters, right, from last year's Supporter Shield team that are not here anymore. And it's too much, it seems, right? To your point, the newer players haven't really adapted super quick. Haven't looked like it. And look, again, Kai Wagner is almost irreplaceable. It's just like Jordi Alba. Like, keep comparing them because I do think it is very similar issues that both teams have. Now, Miami has so much other quality that it's okay. But what he did for Philadelphia, it was just so impactful and so integral. And even if you try to find a similar type player, it is no guarantee that he's going to have that kind of impact. Same with Glesnes, though Glesnes has, been okay for the Galaxy, and he's been hurt for a good amount of this year as well. So, perhaps that was kind of selling at the right time. But man, it's just, it seems like that they maybe, again, overestimated how much of the core starters they could move on from and they could swap out in this offseason after winning a Supporter Shield. And so, yeah, they're the disappointment of the year. No doubt about it. And they've got work to do, right? To kind of right this ship.
Yeah, 1 game to go before the FIFA World Cup break, and then the Union start the season again, second half of the season against New York Red Bulls, July 22nd. And we saw late last night that Columbus had announced that they had fired Hendrik Rudstrom. Austin today just announced that they had fired Nico Estevez. 2 teams that are higher than the Union up in the standings. Are you surprised at all that Bradley Carnell is still in charge of the Union with only 1 win?
No, I mean, also, look, Austin didn't have a great year last year. Columbus, it's a first-year manager that clearly wasn't working. Bradley Carnell earned himself some leeway by winning the Supporter Shield, and he deserves that. I thought that in St. Louis, they were too quick to move on from him after leading St. Louis at the time to the best expansion season in the history of MLS, right? And San Diego passed that up last year, but winning the West when everybody had predicted them to finish last in the West. And then he makes it 20 games into the next season. They did have a better record, more points per game than Philadelphia has right now. They were just under 1 point per game when St. Louis let Bradley go in year 2. And Philadelphia, as we know, the math is easy. It's half a point in a game, which is not good. But I thought at the time it was a little unfair, a little harsh on Bradley. Clearly they got it wrong because then Olaf Melberg, I mean, then they had, that didn't work. They had to fire Olaf Melberg with like 7-8 games. And now Johan Demay seems like a good hire for them. But it's been kind of 2 years in the wilderness, so to speak, since they moved on from Bradley. So no, I'm not surprised, but look, Bradley knows. I mean, he said in the presser after the game, he was like, I can't control that. All I can do is control what I can control, which is making sure this team is working hard and making sure that the team is as ready as they are for every week and in as good of a position as possible to win games. But he'll know that the pressure's on, right? And I think this is a unique year, right? And with this World Cup break, I think teams are going to be, as we've already seen, are going to be more willing to make changes because if you make a change now, it's not throwing away the season, right? I mean, when St. Louis parted ways with Bradley after 20 games with 14 games to go, and I think they had 3 wins and 7 draws, something like that. Maybe it was 3 wins, 7 losses, and 10 draws, 3 wins and 20. They were basically saying, look, John Hackworth was the interim, and he actually, they picked up some points at the end of the year, but you're basically saying, we're moving on and we're looking to next year, right? But now with this World Cup break, you can hire a manager and you can have another preseason. And there's 19 or 20 games, depending on the team, left in the year, which is plenty of time to get into the playoffs. Even if you're a Sporting Kansas City, who they've won 2 in a row now, and now they're not that far from the playoff line. The West is better. The line is higher. But like, you make a couple signings, you make several signings, which they need to do, and you get a preseason basically again in your Kansas City, and you can make the playoffs. So I think because of the setup of the World Cup break, you're going to see more teams make changes. Now, I'm not saying you're going to see Philadelphia do it, and I would never advocate for anybody to lose their job. And I'm not surprised Bradley Carnell has more leeway than other managers. I think he earned it last year. But Bradley Carnell knows that this is, the old adage is, right? Like every coach is an interim coach, right? Like, so to speak, like every coach, every general manager, you're going to lose your job at some point. It's how long. Look at Jim Curtin, right? I mean, if there was ever going to be a coach for life, maybe it's Brian Schmetzer in Seattle and it's Jim Curtin in Philadelphia. Now, Schmetzer is probably that guy for the Sounders, but it hasn't always been smooth for him. And he's had pressure on him, which I've always felt was unfair. And Jim obviously as well. And eventually it was time for Philadelphia and Jim to part ways. So there's always that time. And so Bradley knows that. He knows the pressure of being a coach and that he's got to win and he's got to figure it out and turn things around.
Yeah, and it makes no sense. And being at the games at Subaru Park, I would say the last 3 or 4 home games, the loud boos keep getting louder and louder every time that they announce Bradley Carnell's name.
Oh, man. And Philadelphia is as harsh as it gets, man. Yeah, what have you done for me lately in Philadelphia? No doubt.
Yeah, exactly. And then as soon as Milan Iloski scored against Columbus, I mean, that's the loudest I've heard the stadium in a while. I mean, the loud roar that you heard for that goal, you wouldn't think that the Union have only 1 win on the season with how loud, how passionate the fan base was. But to your point, it is Philadelphia. But yeah, I understand the fan base, why they're upset with Bradley Carnell, with the way that the seasons went, 1 win, defending Supporter Shield winners. But to your point, I mean, he had an unbelievable season last year. Who would have expected that? And you're replacing an icon in Jim Curtin, a local Philly kid, and that's pressure in itself for Bradley Carnell. And to his credit, he keeps a lot of the backroom staff that Jim Curtin previously had here, and of course, he brings in his own guys and everything, but a lot of those players were still here from Jim Curtin. And now it's getting the players to believe you, to maybe redefine the press a little bit, redefine the playing style a little bit. And the best thing that Bradley Carnell could have done to get the fan base, to get the players, to get the staff behind him is win. And he keeps winning, and shocks the league, wins the Supporter Shield championship. And then you look this year and only 1 win. And yeah, I don't think this is all on Bradley Carnell. I think, to your point, Jake, a lot of pieces, a lot of key pieces. Maybe it was too much to move around. I get it. Kai Wagner's always had aspirations to play in Europe. The Union finally get an offer from Birmingham City, and they say, hey, look, Kai, we got this offer. You've always said you want to go. Here you go. Here's your opportunity. And he's looked well with Birmingham City. You would say that was absolutely the right move for Kai Wagner. You look at Jacob Glesnes. Okay, a lot of injuries the last couple of years, maybe the wrong age of 30. And when you have those hernia injuries as a defender, you're not getting any younger. Jacob Glesnes' value is never going to be as high as it was last season, because after 2024, Union fans were calling for Jacob Glesnes to get moved. Then he has a arguably defender of the year type of year in 2025. And now they're like, oh my God, why are we getting rid of Jacob Glesnes? And it's so funny. It's like, you guys were calling for him to be sold a year prior, and he comes out and looks like he has during most of his time in Philadelphia. Ty Baribo, I think that's the one that upsets Union fans maybe the most, because they can accept Kai Wagner wanting to go to Europe. But seeing Ty Baribo not get the money, not get the offer from the Union that he was looking for, DC United said, we have no issues with that. And now he continues to score like he was with Philadelphia. I get it. He wasn't scoring as much as he was in the second half of the season for Philadelphia, but you did have a proven goal scorer in Ty Baribo, and now he's playing for a rival with DC United, and he's continuing to score.
But it's kind of Philadelphia's MO, right? I mean, Julian Carranza, they didn't want to pay him, and they lose him basically for free, right? And Carranza was a good player, and probably would have ended up in Europe anyway. And when that happens, and it's like, okay, well, we've got this Baribo guy who Jim Curtin wouldn't play. And then he's forced to play. And I remember talking to Jim before. It was one of the first games, must have gone down with Julian. And all right, so we're playing Ty, and I think we asked him what, Ty, what's going to happen? He's like, if he goes out and scores 2 goals or whatever, then I'm an idiot or something, because he didn't see it from Ty in training, and he challenged Ty to be better. And we talked to him about it. He was very open about that with us, at least, because we did several games when Ty was just sitting on the bench, not getting playing time. And I think Ty gets a brace, right? Like he does. He was either in Cincinnati or Columbus.
Exactly.
And like we're laughing about that. And I'm like, Jack, this is what Jim said. And Jim is great.
So
he's
great.
as good as it comes. So like it was perfect. He owned it and everything. And he's awesome. It was a great quote. And Jim is as good as as good as it gets to talk to, and as open as it gets. And so that happened. And then Ty is doing very well. And so if you're Philadelphia, maybe you're like, okay, we can do this again. We've got Damiani, and we're going to sign Alado. And it hasn't worked, right? And so I agree. At some point, you're almost a victim of your own success, because you have been able to just roll it over, right? And all right, we're going to replace this guy, and it works. And even at center back, right? I mean, what? Mark McKenzie. There's a few guys I'm sure I'm not thinking of. Austin Trusty was in the academy, right? I know he went to Colorado first and then overseas. And then, all right, Jack Elliott and Glesnes. And then Elliott leaves, and Macania looks like, oh, this is great. We did it again, and Glesnes and Macania. And so, okay, now we can do Macania with someone else. It's going to keep working. And it feels like this year it's almost been a perfect storm of they haven't been able to replace that mainstay, which they, to their credit, Philadelphia has been able to do for the better part of 5, 6, 7 years. They always were able to do it. And it just hasn't worked out this year in multiple positions. And I think that's why you see them in the spot they are.
Yeah, I agree. And Union fans have probably got annoyed with me saying this, but I continue looking at the advanced metrics. Like, the Union aren't playing as bad as the record says. And I get you are what your record says, only 1 win. But it's not like the Union are getting outplayed in every game that they've played this season. They're being competitive. They're just not finishing off chances, which you've got to do against Miami this weekend.
For me, I think it's the quality at the end, right? Like, who's going to score that goal? Who's going to be your match winner? And I don't know that they have that. And in years past, you did at least enough. Kai would create for Ty, or for Julian or Mikel or whoever, and they would there was enough quality there that they'd figure out a way to get a goal. And it just feels like it's not quite there now. Cavan's a little too young to have that full burden on him, though I've been impressed with him. I think he's really progressing nicely. He looks it when he gets on the ball. I really like Milan Olowski. I mean, he is a competitor. He is a confident guy. He believes in himself. He's one that, there's a lot of talk of the Philly guys that are now in San Diego, like what could have been, right, if they were still in Philly. Well, I think San Diego, what could have been if you kept Olowski. Ingvartsen's scoring now, so it's okay. But I thought for the beginning of the year, and at the end of last year, I thought they really missed Olowski, and I was shocked that they didn't sign him permanently and let him go to back and then end up with Philly. But it's even just watching, this morning, watching the Columbus game as I was flying back home after doing Miami last night, and it felt like those two guys, okay, they've got a threat. When they get on the ball, maybe something can happen. But outside of that, where's that spark going to come from? Where's that moment going to come from? And I think everything can be great and the press is great, but you still need that, right? You still need to score a goal. And I think that's what they're trying to figure out, is where those come from. Like, they've scored 14 goals in 14 games, right? Which is bottom of the league. 1 goal per game is bottom of the league. There's a couple teams that have scored only 13, but they've only played 13 games. So bottom goals per game in the league, tied with a few others, which is a big difference. You mentioned the defensive difference, but the attacking difference is also stark.
Yeah, it is. And the Union are going to have their work cut out for them on Sunday against Inter Miami, with Awethu Makanya being suspended for this match due to yellow card accumulation. We know Jafet Siri has been out the last couple games with that shoulder injury. We'll see. Will he be good to go? Ben Bender has been playing left back the last 2 games. We know we've seen him play it in CONCACAF Champions Cup. He's played it against New York City, but he's not a natural left back. To his credit, he has looked good.
And who hangs out on the right side of the attack for Inter Miami?
Good luck.
It's Leo Messi. I mean, good luck, Ben Bender, if that's what you're going to do. And without Makanya, yeah, it's a tough task.
And Frankie Westfield, who knows if he's good to go. I mean, I would imagine if Frankie Westfield's good to go, you probably put Nathan Harriel out left to just sit back, defend. But again, you're going to need a double, triple team Leo Messi. And even then, that's not enough to do it against a player of his quality. But Anello was a strong spark off the bench for the Union, got the assist for the Olaski goal. And I think Indiana Vasilov, when he moved deeper as one of the 2 6s next to Danley John Jock, thought he actually looked better there than he has playing as one of the 2 10s. And maybe that's something that Bradley Carnell goes back to in this game against Miami. Again, a full disclosure, recording this episode on Monday. You guys are either listening to this on Wednesday or Thursday. Bradley Carnell hasn't had his press conference yet. So we'll get injury updates and all that stuff from Carnell. So maybe a whole bunch of stuff has changed, and now you guys can just ignore what I've thrown out there for potential lineups. Maybe not. But yeah, I do think the Union have the work cut out for them. And again, the Union have looked better the last 2 games against Miami, but it just
they still haven't beaten Miami since Leo Messi arrived. And yes, not the 4-1 of the League's Cup semifinals, perhaps, but they're still trying to do that. Yeah, the injuries is big, right? I mean, I kind of wonder how you approach this last game before the break, because you do have 7-8 weeks off. It's basically 60 days until your next game, right? It is 59 days, I think, exactly until your next game. So why not throw somebody out there? If they pick up a little something, they've got plenty of time to recover. They're going to go kick their feet up for 3 weeks anyway. They're mandated time off, 20 days or whatever it is. But on the other hand, the other, I think, train of thought, which is the prudent one, and I would imagine the one most teams will take, is don't risk doing something dumb with 1 game before the break and potentially trying to push for 1 game with a guy who isn't 100%, and that 90%, healed turns to a multi-month, maybe season-ending issue, when it's just 1 more game to sit out. And now he's got 7 months to get from 90% to 100%, or 7 weeks to get from 90% to 100%. So I would imagine most teams will take that path. But we'll see. If you're Philly, you're pretty desperate to have a good feeling coming into the break, right? I mean, you're going to be in last place no matter what, because they're 4 points back. So no matter what, you're going to sit in last heading into this World Cup break in the entire league. But if you go in with a win over Miami, I mean, you feel much different than if you're sitting on 7 points if you lose this game.
Yeah, I agree. And Philadelphia need the 3 points. And I think that would rejuvenate the team, give them confidence going into this break, rejuvenate the coaching staff. And okay, we can take what we did against Miami. We can take what we did against Orlando City, even though we lost, what we did against Columbus. And now we have building blocks. And now let's go ahead and build something during the break. And then let's come out flying against New York Red Bulls, or Red Bull New York, the first game of the season, or the second half of the season.
Red Bull New York. That's right. That's what it is. Yeah. Which is, look, that should be an interesting game, right? But I'm going to say Red Bull so many times. We haven't called a Red Bull New York game yet. It's like the Lionel thing. Like I know I totally respect, like, whatever you want to be called to an extent. You know what I mean? I mean, if you want to be called, again, Tom instead of Thomas, or, I'm Jake, my real name is Jacob, right? Like, no problem, Leo. As long as it's not something ridiculous. If somebody wants to be, right, Will instead of Willie. William Agada, I think, came to Kansas City and people are calling him William, and he's like, no, I want to be Willie. And so after like 6 weeks, it was Willie. So I have no problem with that with Leo. But yeah, anyway, Red Bull, New York, it's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like during the Orlando City versus Philadelphia game, Dax McCarty called it Exploria Stadium instead of Inter & Co. And to me, it's always going to be Exploria.
Come on, Dax. No, those sponsors pay big money. Look, it is a business of sports, and so they're paying big money. Inter and Co is not going to be happy with that. Dax is an Orlando guy.
He did correct it quickly, though. He did correct it quickly. But still, it's like you get so used to these names, or like Red Bull Arena, now Sports Illustrated. So it takes a little bit, right? But Jake, it's been a pleasure having you on for 15 minutes on here. And
thanks, Tom.
Thank you so much for helping me preview this match. And for any Philadelphia fans that are listening to you, may not follow you on social media, where can people follow you?
Yeah, at Jake Zivin on social media. I'm not a big social media guy, but follow me and say hello, all that stuff. Instagram and X would be the ones I use the most. Twitter, I still call it Twitter.
Me
Speaking
too.
of that, I'm definitely still call it Twitter.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, 100%. X. Come on,
Blue Sky as well. I'm on Blue Sky. But again, I'm not the most active social media guy.
For sure. And if you guys don't follow the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow at Free Kick Pod, wherever you get your podcast, The Free Kick. Check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/freekickpod, live every single podcast episode. You can also check out the goals breakdown videos there. Or if you want to check out the podcast goals breakdown videos or my articles all in one place, thefreekick.substack.com. Again, Philadelphia Union into Miami, 7 p.m. on Sunday. Philadelphia needing 3 points, in my opinion, for them to continue to build off of what they've been building the last couple of games. But again, it's into Miami, never an easy task. We'll see what happens. We'll get an update from Bradley Carnell, and maybe we'll get positive news in terms of injuries. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.